It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, you beautiful souls, and happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much for keeping it locked. We've got 3 hours of amazing feel-good entertainment coming your way, and of course, a vitally important discussion for some of you out there. Last week marked Pregnancy Awareness Week, with a focus on providing pregnant women, their partners, and the community with information to ensure a safe pregnancy journey for both mother and baby. That is paramount. Now, one of the topics that doesn't always necessarily get covered is postnatal depression. Ching, ching, a few people really taking notice now. And here to chat about this subject are Dr. Ronelle Williams and Dr. Lerato Dekobi Kalane, who are both psychiatrists and members of the South African Society of Psychiatrists. So we welcome them and wish them a very happy Valentine's Day as well. And putting that out there to you guys, if you've got any questions about postnatal depression or any insights, or perhaps you are caught in the grips right now, reach out, please. This is a safe place. We'd love to hear from you. 063-408-8863. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for kind of sticking to the brief. Can I ask why there's no red being featured here? Are you trying to make a statement within your career space?
No, I'm not making a statement. I'm making a personal statement.
I love it.
Yes.
No, you both look exquisite. Thank you so much for being here on this day of love. But we are, of course, focusing on a journey that might not get the cover that it needs, because it's quite a deeply personal and a difficult space to be in, especially for that mother who's already been through the most, coming into the space where you should be filled with joy and exploding with abundant happiness, and there is nothing there. The cup is empty. Maybe, Dr. Williams, I can start with you. What is postnatal depression as opposed to normal depression? What is going on within the mind and body?
Yeah. You're right, it is something that's not necessarily identified, but the difference is that you'll have the same symptoms as your normal depression, but it's the time frame. So right now it's identified as having a depressive episode, but during pregnancy and within the 4 weeks after childbirth, that will be your peripartum depression, which is in pregnancy, and when it is starting in the 4 weeks after pregnancy, then it's your postpartum depression. So the difference is when the symptoms start and how it presents at that time. That's the only difference that you can see.
Why is it happening? What is going on? Because I know the body is awash. There is so much going on just situationally in that space, but what triggers that? What is actually going on a physical level?
So there's multiple factors, and I think we're going to sit here a while if we go through it. But just to mention a few, it will be biological. So what's happening in the female's body at that time? A lot of changes happens with pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after childbirth. So a lot of the times hormonal changes happen. Then there's external factors. For example, we know in South Africa our level of poverty and access to mental health services, let alone under-resourced public services. And we have the highest rate of gender-based violence and poor social support. So,
and 12 hours of darkness and all of that.
Load shedding. We've got the electricity. There's many factors that contribute to a female being at high risk of developing either depression in pregnancy or after the childbirth.
See, now you've flipped this whole conversation on its head here, because in a perfect world, it's a difficult enough situation. In an imperfect world, when you add this kind of level of destabilization, it can be extremely, I know there is a mental element to it, but what are the dangers physically and mentally for mother and baby during this critical phase?
So a mom who is depressed will struggle to bond with the baby. And when you're struggling to bond with the baby, you are going to struggle to feed the baby. So the baby is at risk of being malnourished. Mom is at risk of being malnourished herself, because when you are depressed, you lose interest in doing everything. You lose your appetite. Mom will be sleep deprived. Baby will be sleep deprived. Mom might even miss her post-delivery appointments because you're not list to do anything. You have no energy. You're not even motivated for your checkups. And then as a result, baby will then be at risk of missing out on their vaccinations. So it just becomes a spiraling snowball. It will also affect the father, because when mom is depressed, dad may then also become depressed, and then the whole system becomes very ill.
And you could have stopped at just sleep deprivation. I think that's pretty much where it begins and ends for a lot of parents out there, but it can destabilize you at such a critical time. We know that. If you are experiencing anything yourself right now and you'd like to reach out, 063-408-8863, that is the line to use. We'd love to hear from you. We are not going anywhere. The conversation will continue.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, you beautiful souls. Once again, happy Valentine's Day, but let that not distract us from our very important conversation this morning. Up to 47, nearly half of South African women experience depression during pregnancy. That is an eye-opener, and up to 50% suffer from postnatal depression, compared to the global rate of approximately 12% of women experiencing depression during or after pregnancy. Dr. Renelle Williams and Dr. Lerato Dekobe Kalane are both psychiatrists and members of the South African Society of Psychiatrists, and still with us to chat about this very interesting subject. Lerato, how does this differ from mother to mother? Is this a one-size-fits-all? What influences our journey through this particular phase?
Yeah. So depression is depression, whether you're sitting in Constantia or you're sitting in Googs. Depression is depression. I think the only difference would be the access to resources. Very important for new moms is the social support. You know, in my culture, being Sotho, when you have your first baby, you go to your maternal home. You go to your mom, mom helps you, and you stay with mom anything between a month and 3 months. When you have your second baby and subsequent babies, either mom comes to your home or mom-in-law comes to your home, but there is always support of an older woman. So it becomes more difficult now when people are so isolated. People are now living in their little apartments. There isn't that support. Like you said, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to really support that new mom. So the resources are very, very important. And in people who are living in disadvantaged backgrounds, lack of those resources can really amplify the symptoms and make it more difficult for a woman to get help for the depression.
And I mean, it becomes again a lesson in probably privilege, this conversation, more than anything else when you look at the South African context. That being said, there is support a phone call away, and we're going to keep SADAG's number up on our screen. I think we should probably have it on our screen all day, every day. But that is a phone call away. There is someone to talk to, and I love that notion of, obviously, women who have gone through this journey. There is structural support, but there's also mental support and lessons learned. Where do we start then, once we are entering into this space, to protect ourselves in this? Can we be proactive in managing our mental state moving through pregnancy? Because clearly there is something that's happening in South Africa that is exacerbating the situation far more beyond the global average, much more. So what is happening in South Africa, and how do we address that?
So in South Africa, we've got the highest rate of poverty, our lowest socioeconomic group of population have less access to our public health services, let alone the health services are under-resourced. So what I would suggest and say to everybody out there is education is one, because there is a lack of knowledge, not just amongst our population, but even in our medical health professionals about depression in pregnancy or after pregnancy. The second would be equip yourself with the information, because the knowledge out there is pregnancy is great. Everybody should be happy, but people feel embarrassed to go and say, I'm struggling as a mother.
That's the human condition.
Yes.
Especially in motherhood when you should have it covered.
Yes, and you must have a natural bonding with the baby when you have the baby. None of that happens for everyone, and experience is individual. So it would be getting yourself educated, and then also for us as part of SASOP to educate our fellow colleagues about the symptoms of depression and what to look out for. The one thing we know is that a lot of these women, they only get to see somebody the first time when they're pregnant, because they have to go for their antenatal checkups. And that is the first time some people get identified as being depressed. So I would say that's when they see somebody regularly, and that the gynecological checkup is not just physical, but mental health as well as social, because our social support needs to be there. Our women are sitting out there with no support. with intimate partner violence, unemployment as well. So we can't address all of that as
I was joking about we're going to
professionals.
save the world in the next 7 minutes. It looks like we're going to have to save the world in the next 7 minutes if we're going to get this right. Now, the bottom line is there are resources, and there is an amazing element to being South African, and that is this ability to find solutions in the darkest of times. And I guarantee you there is an organization ready to help you. We're going to get into what we can do if you are experiencing any form of depression right now through your pregnancy journey. We'll get into some proactive tips in just a moment.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying connected as we continue our conversation this morning with Dr. Ronelle Williams and Dr. Lerato Dikobe Kalane, who are both psychiatrists and, I stress, members of the South African Society of Psychiatrists, because it does matter. And they're wrapping up our discussion on postnatal depression. Up to half of expectant mothers here in South Africa experience depression during pregnancy and following childbirth. That goes undiagnosed and worse, untreated, and with risks to themselves, obviously, but also their baby's health and their future development. Well, we are offering now for this next segment some practical advice. But first, I'd like to hear from one of you guys. You've weighed in with a voice note. Let's hear.
Good morning, Team Expresso. It's Natalie Daniels here
Morning,
from
Natalie.
Fit Moms, pre and postnatal fitness coach. So I think for me, the shout out basically is that the postpartum depression just doesn't start after baby's there. It starts within pregnancy as well. So please do watch your partners, your wives, give that extra TLC, that extra love. And when professional help is needed, please let them reach out, reach out, reach out.
Natalie does amazing work in that space. You might have encountered her in this kind of ecosystem that we live in, but her approach is movement and helping women connect with their bodies again, which is fantastic. Ronelle, and I hope you don't mind me using first names here, but I feel like we're in the same little circle now. And that's what I want to speak to, is that circle around you, because it might feel like you're isolated, but there are people that you can reach out to. What should we do if we're in that circle, most notably as a partner? If our partner is clearly in the throes of depression, how do we approach that? Because we're also generally going to have a baby in our hands when doing this. So how do we as a partner or someone in that space help?
I think it's to identify that it is overwhelming for both mom, father, and the family, because it's a huge change.
Yeah, the biggest.
So it's the biggest change you're ever going to have. And knowing that there's going to be changes, but when to identify for a partner that there's a change in their functioning from the way they were before, and there's some concerning things to look out for that some people need to be aware of. So support is going to be the biggest thing. And support not just from the partner, but from the social network, family, friends, like Lerato mentioned earlier, you know, mom coming, mother-in-law coming.
And I had a backup. I'm sorry to interject there, but this is kind of case in point where over that week, the 2 weeks after my daughter was born, I had to have spinal surgery. It was insane. You can imagine for my poor wife with a 5-year-old boy and a newborn and a husband who can't move. Our complex cooked a meal for us every night of the week just to help her out. That's awesome, amazing. Didn't have to be massive, just one meal. Became a competition to see who was going to cook the best meal. It was even better. But I get that. I understand. It's not support that you feel is best, but ask, find out.
Yes.
What can happen if we don't treat? And how, maybe let's look at some of the treatment options in a South African context. First of all, what could happen if we don't diagnose and treat?
You know, so if postpartum depression is not diagnosed, it can complicate into a full-blown major depressive episode. And when it becomes severe, the mom can become psychotic. And when mom is psychotic, losing touch with reality, that's when we will then hear on the news about mom killing baby or mom committing suicide.
Yeah.
Treatment.
And this is what we're hearing every day.
Yes, yes, yeah. So treatment approach, in varsity we were taught biopsychosocial approach. I add a twist to it, it's biopsychosocial spiritual approach.
I love it.
So biologically, we need to make sure that mom gets on the correct antidepressant. And it's a myth that you can't breastfeed while taking antidepressants. It is important to save mom's mental health so that baby can get properly fed.
That's where it starts.
Yes, so there are medications that are safe to use for a lactating mom. And then psychologically, we need is what the talk therapy, psychotherapy with either a psychologist or with your psychiatrist or a registered counselor. And then socially, it's that social support system. Make sure that the village is there. Make sure that the extended family is there to give support. If there's a need for a social worker to intervene, to put those social measures in place, it's very important. And in the spiritual aspect, it's just remaining connected with yourself. Whatever your spiritual belief may be, you hold on to that because that will always make sure that you get better.
You guys are amazing. I'm going to flip the script here and say, because in light of the South African context, clearly there are a lot of amazing support structures and people out there doing amazing work. But most importantly, there are some young moms in South Africa achieving the most and completely defying the odds right now in a way that no one else in the world is. So South Africa, on this Valentine's Day, I'm going to stress again how amazing you are. If you're a young mother, congratulations. If you need help, whether it's just picking up a phone and phoning the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, or speaking to a friend, or speaking to your gynae, just speak up and ask for help. Ladies, thank you so much. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Thank you.